So I've been using the Apple Studio Display for the past 2 years now, and boy did this monitor stir up a lot of controversy when it was released. It definitely has been one of Apple's more polarizing product releases in recent years, but now that the hype has settled down, I wanted to do a long-term review and share my experience using the Studio Display for the past 2 years. Before we begin, I wanted to quickly mention that I've recently started a monthly newsletter where I share interesting things relating to tech and the creator economy, stuff which I can't really cover in these videos. If anyone is interested, I'll leave a link to it in the description below. Let's get into the video. So starting off with the spec sheet, I won't bore you too long with this since you've probably already seen a dozen other Studio Display reviews by now, but the Apple Studio Display is a 5K LCD display that can reach up to 600 nits of SDR brightness, supports True Tone, Night Shift, and Auto Brightness. At 27 inches, it comes in at a pixel density of 218 pixels per inch, making it a Retina display. It comes with a built-in 12 megapixel ultra-wide webcam that supports Apple's center stage feature, a built-in microphone, and a 6-speaker sound system that supports spatial audio. You also get a Thunderbolt USB-C port and a 1 meter braided cable that transfers data at 40 gigabits per second and delivers power up to 96 watts, along with 3 additional USB-C ports that support data transfer speeds of 10 gigabits per second. Most importantly, it features the revolutionary A13 Bionic chip that enables Hey Siri support, because why the hell not?
Wow.
But enough talking about specs, let's get on to what I actually like about this monitor. The first thing being the design. It's no secret that Apple know what they're doing when it comes to design, and the Studio Display is no exception. The aluminium finish on it is absolutely stunning. It looks and feels extremely premium, which it should do considering how much it costs. The base of the display feels extremely solid. I've never encountered any issues with wobbling, and the attention to detail Apple have put into things like the air vents and the speaker grills is actually pretty impressive. Interestingly, I've not actually once heard the air vents on the Studio Display come on before, so I don't know if they're just an aesthetic touch that Apple have included. The sides of the display and the bezels are also a bit thick compared to what I'd expect, but during day-to-day usage, it's not really something that you pick up on. And yeah, overall, the build quality has held up really well. I've not noticed any marks or scratches anywhere on this thing, but I think what strikes me the most about the build quality is that no other manufacturer seems to have offered something similar. Granted, there are a few monitors like the Dell U2720Q and the Samsung S90 PC that are decent looking, but if you look at most other displays on the market, 99% of them look straight out awful in terms of design. And then when you factor in the plastic build quality, it gets even worse. Obviously, if you're paying $300 or $400 for a monitor, that makes sense because manufacturers do need to save on costs somewhere. But even for displays that cost well over $1,000, like the LG Ultrafine, I don't know what their design team were thinking when they cooked this up. If anyone does know why this is the case, please do let me know in the comments down below, because I genuinely am curious to know why it is so difficult for manufacturers to design decent looking monitors. When it comes to the screen quality, even in 2024, the Studio Display remains one of the only Retina quality displays out there on the market, which basically means that the resolution is sharp enough for you to not notice any pixels on the screen using standard display scaling. This was a massive issue I used to encounter with previous 4K displays I used to use in the past, where the content would just look pixelated and slightly fuzzy. And I think a big part of that quality difference also just boils down to the fact that the Studio Display is a glossy display, which I think gives the display a more premium feel compared to some of the matte displays you get with most other monitors. Granted, this isn't something that every user cares about, but if you do care about it, you probably care a lot about this sort of thing. For creative professionals, the color accuracy and the resolution of the screen makes doing tasks like editing photos and color grading videos a lot more accurate and pleasant of an experience. And even if you're just a normal user doing basic office tasks, you're going to absolutely love how sharp all of the text looks. It's a bit overkill, but you'll love it anyway. And it's why you'll see so many of your favorite creators feature the Studio Display in their setups. One thing to note though, is that the Studio Display is using just a standard 60Hz LCD display. So it's not using any modern display technology like mini LED or OLED, which I think is quite disappointing. The 60 hertz thing I can understand because obviously right now you can't really output 120 hertz at 5K using the current Thunderbolt 4 technology. It just doesn't have enough bandwidth. But with LCD, there have been many times where I've noticed that the blacks on the studio display don't quite feel like true blacks. It feels more like a dark grayish color. And when I compare the colors on the studio display to the OLED screen on my M4 iPad Pro, I definitely do notice a difference in things like contrast, which does make me slightly worried about how future-proof this display is going to remain. The display also doesn't support HDR, although granted, I don't really edit or watch much HDR content to care, and with it being capable of reaching up to 600 nits of brightness, it's actually brighter than most official rated HDR displays out there. Another thing that's great about this monitor is that with its one cable setup, it's extremely simple to use, requiring just a single Thunderbolt cable that connects straight to your Mac or your iPad. There's no need to calibrate the colors on the display, and once it's connected, you can do things like control the volume and the brightness directly from your Mac, which isn't something you can easily do on other displays. Though if you're using your Mac's display at the same time, you do run into issues where you can only adjust one display's brightness at a time. Because you've got things like the webcam and the speakers included, you don't necessarily have to worry about purchasing these accessories separately and cluttering your desk with more wires. The speakers have held up extremely well too, with enough loudness and bass that I haven't actually bothered purchasing any speakers for my current desk setup. For me, the more wires I can eliminate, the happier I am, and the studio display has allowed me to do just that. But it's not all sunshine and rainbows, because there are a few issues with the studio display that we need to talk about. The first being that webcam. Yes, it is nice that Apple have included a webcam in this display, and it has saved me from having to purchase a separate one, but the quality on this camera is just not great. And I think that's because even though this is a 12 megapixel camera, it's an ultra wide camera. And the way that the center stage feature sort of works is that it essentially crops in on that ultra wide to keep you in focus. And so naturally, when you crop in on a 12 megapixel image, you're going to end up with a result that's less than 12 megapixels, which from my understanding can't really be fixed no matter how much software processing Apple tries to apply. And so in some ways, Apple did kind of shoot themselves in the foot here by trying to be fancy with that webcam. Personally, I always keep center stage turned off because I find it's a bit annoying when the camera constantly tracks me around every time I go to grab a glass of water during a meeting. I feel like Apple also could have saved a bit of money by not including that A13 chip. I don't think there's been a single moment where I've actually needed to summon Siri on my studio display. Another issue I've faced is that the speakers will occasionally black out whenever they go above a certain volume. Fixing the issue is usually pretty easy. I just have to disconnect the speakers from my Mac and then reconnect them for them to begin working again. But it's a bug that I wouldn't expect from a monitor this expensive. And on some studio display models, you might also notice these black shadows in the corner of your display, which can get quite annoying to look at. At this price point, I would have also liked to have seen a few more ports included on the back of the display. Since the Thunderbolt display is being connected to your device, you only really get 3 spare USB-C ports, and they only transfer data at 10 gigabits per second, which means if you wanted to connect a fast SSD, you'd have to connect that directly to your Mac, assuming the ports aren't already taken up. But I think the main issue for me is that 27 inches can feel quite small, especially when you're trying to split screen with more than 2 apps open, or you're scrolling through a video timeline. And it would be nice if Apple could make a cheaper 32-inch display at some point, because right now the only 32-inch monitor they sell is the $5,000 Pro Display XDR, which is a bit of a stretch for me. And on that note, we need to talk about the elephant of the room, which is the price. It wouldn't be an Apple review if we didn't talk about the price of this thing. The Studio Display starts off at $1599, and that's just for the base spec. If you want to upgrade to the high adjustable stand option, you have to pay an additional $400. And if you want to add a nano texture coating to your display, that will cost an additional $300, meaning you could be spending up to $2,300 on a fully spec studio display, which is absolutely wild. And the worst part about it is that if you later change your mind and decide that you want to go for, say, a Visa mount, you have to physically take the display with you to the Apple Store in order to get that changed. Now, I am quite lucky because here in the UK, I was able to pick this thing up for £1,300, using my student discount and a favorable exchange rate, I did go for the base model, mainly because it was cheaper and also because my desk already has a stand for my display, so I didn't really need the tilt option. And I find that the anti-reflective coating and brightness are more than enough to counteract any reflections I get through my window. One thing I'll mention about pricing though is that Apple products generally do tend to retain their value for quite a long time. With a quick search on sites like eBay, you'll often find plenty of used studio displays selling for well over $1,000 in 2024. And on sites like Amazon, you can pick up a brand new studio display on discount for just $1,300. So you can imagine that if you held onto this thing for 5 years and sold it for, say, $700, you'd be getting over half of your money back, which for 5 years of usage is not bad. So, would I recommend a studio display to most people? And the answer is probably not. It doesn't really make much sense for the average consumer to be spending $1,600 on a monitor that's built using display tech from the 2010s. But equally, I feel like the studio display was never really made for the average consumer. It very much is a niche product that's targeted at enthusiast users, people who want that pixel perfect display with a solid build quality that integrates perfectly with their Mac and iPad setup, who aren't satisfied with what the rest of the PC market currently has to offer. And if you are that type of consumer, then you probably already know who you are. And if you fall into that camp, by all means go out and buy a studio display. I guarantee you won't regret it. I certainly haven't regretted it. Yes, it was expensive, but equally, I feel like I've gotten so much value out of the display because it's a monitor which I actually enjoy using, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but the design and the build quality of this display really have inspired me to get my best work done. In fact, back when I was at university, a lot of my friends used to ask me how it was that I was able to sit down at my desk and study for such long periods of time. And I used to joke that owning a studio display was my secret. And I was sort of half joking here because there were times where I would literally sit at my desk to get work done just so that I could stare at my studio display for 3 hours because it genuinely made working on my Mac feel so much more enjoyable. And this was way before I started any of this content creation stuff. And so, in that sense, paying $1,300 for a display which I'm using to get work done on every single day seemed like a worthwhile investment. The way I see it is that there are people out there who will spend thousands of dollars on brand new cars and televisions. So I figured, why not spend the same kind of money on an investment into myself? Obviously, not everyone will relate to this. Some of you might be sat there thinking, what the hell is this guy on about? Who cares about aesthetics or design on a monitor? And if you're thinking that, then chances are the studio display probably isn't for you. And this is why it's such a difficult product to review, because you probably already know if you want one. So whatever I say in this video likely won't change your mind. If anything, it will just confirm what you already knew. But like I said, for me, the studio display has been a joy to use over the past 2 years. And if you want one and you can afford it, my recommendation would be to just go for it. And if not, hopefully you like this video anyway. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for the next one.